Boots Burns, and today my cat has joined me and decided that she has wanted to be in the video, so you may see or hear her during parts of this. But what we're here to talk about today is the difference in the generations and their work styles. I've noticed currently a lot of the new generation's work style is very different than what I was used to when I was growing up or what my parents were used to when they were growing up. And I thought it would be interesting to explore those differences and maybe why some of the changes have taken place. My sons have been in many different jobs. I should say they've been in the same types of jobs, but with many different employers. That's more accurate. And I know that used to trouble me at first because in my day, it was looked upon as being a good asset if you have stayed with a company for a number of years before you have moved on to another one. Employers seem to like that stability and loyalty. My sons have changed employers sometimes yearly as they have grown, and I was concerned about that at first because I thought that it would be looked down upon as being kind of flighty, not reliable, why do they keep changing jobs and how long are they going to be here? And so I was worried that they wouldn't get hired at the next place they wanted to go. But my oldest son explained it to me in a clear way that actually employers do like the fact that the millennials tend to change jobs frequently, but they're always jobs that help them learn more, give them more experience, and help the company in their advancements towards technology and what is happening in the work field nowadays and where they want to go. Employers like that the millennials are getting more experience and that they're willing to try new things, that they're willing to move up, that they're trying to advance. And so they're looked upon as a good asset for employers nowadays. And that's not a detriment to them as it would have been, I think, back in my day. But let's explore the generational work styles and see what we think about that today. Okay, this graphic shows a short description of what they claim that the work ethics are for the different generations. And for the baby boomers, they have that they were very hardworking people and that they were loyal and stayed with an employer if it was a good employer. Generation X is the most independent and resourceful, which means that to me that they were really good self-starters and they're really great problem solvers. And then the millennials are being trademarked now as having sophistication because of their knowledge of technology and the ever increasing and changing technology and their ability to adapt to that changing technology and work with it and do well. Now, those are some good thumbnails of the differences between the generations. And I would start to think about what happened in those generations that made them use the work styles that they had. So I researched a little and I found that the baby boomers, a lot of them came from a generation where a lot of their parents and maybe perhaps themselves didn't even graduate from high school. A lot of their parents quit working at like the age of 12 because child labor was a huge thing back 100 years ago. When they left school, they would go into generally manufacturing type jobs where they do the same thing on an assembly line. And since that was their education, they usually stayed there for years and years. And since they learned this technique as they grew, some of them may have switched over to other manufacturing jobs. And then eventually, of course, child labor was made illegal. But then you get into the manufacturing jobs, like with the car manufacturers. And a lot of those uneducated laborers that grew up working in plants got jobs in these plants, and they were gaining a skill of knowing how an operating manufacturing assembly line works. And that became their skill, and they were able to have their children more educated as time grew. Also, women got into it, especially during the war. They were hired to do many different assembly line type of projects. And again, that gave their families extra income. And so their children were able to continue and complete their education at least through the 12th grade and graduate. And that gave them the many opportunities for the next generation. So I think as we move into the newer generations, we start to kind of lose that loyalty to those employers who have looked out for us and employed us even with no education, and made a good living for us and our parents. We start to see the loyalty to the employer fade. And a good part of that is the employer's fault, because as I grew and went through my changes in employment, I noticed more and more in the recent years that employers just really kind of don't care about their employees. They mainly care about the bottom line and who they can get to help them make that bottom line. And, we have all heard stories of back in the day, like Henry Ford, what a good man he was about caring about his employees, because he knew that's what made his business go. And he would take steps like to make sure that the cost of the average car was something that his employees could afford to buy, and so on. There was a care about employees back in the older generation that seems to have been lost in the new or latest generation. There are still some companies who learn from that and know about it. Companies like Google and other ones that give their employees such extra perks and benefits that they can't wait to apply to get into that company. And there's waiting lists because nobody wants to leave because it is so good. So there are some companies that have learned from the past generations, and I don't know why more companies don't want to try that, because as I grew older in the workforce and started working with younger and younger people, I noticed that the younger workers would often just leave if they got bored with their job, or if they didn't like what the employer was asking them to do, or if they just wanted time off. They would just up and quit and leave. And it was always astounding to me, because that would have never happened in my generation. We were always worried about our paycheck and where are we going to get the money to continue on, and how are we ever going to find another job. And maybe it's because the younger generation has experience in so many different type jobs that they can always leave and find another one with no problem. A lot of them have education, and even the ones that don't have labored in different areas where they've gained skill sets. And at least where I live, there are a lot of labor or jobs that are open and available. Not for a lot of money, but for decent money. And so they are just asking for employees, and the young people here can go to this job or that job or that job and almost are guaranteed to get in. So they have that flexibility. And it was always something that just, really was hard for me to take. I couldn't understand it. And in my generation, you had to stay. There wasn't a lot of jobs. People were scrambling for jobs and fighting for them. And I've seen that change in my area anyway, and I don't know if it has to do with more technology and people going to that and not having the laborers. Somebody who has a 4-year college education may not want to run a press in a manufacturing plant, even though they can make good money doing it. And therefore, there are a lot of jobs for laborers that don't have college education. And maybe that's why they can pick up and leave and go to another job just on a whim, so to speak. At least that's what I think and I see. So I guess that's why there have been the changes. And then, if you actually go into the millennials, they just have so much technological knowledge that I don't know if they could even do a laborer job, or that they would probably find it very, very unchallenging. And so they have no problem finding jobs in the technological side of things because so many companies and businesses are relying more and more on technology to get their work done. So perhaps that is why that they are also very successful and can easily move from job to job. And then, it's just that it's a whole different experience in society now because of all the changes, not just any one, not just education, not just industry. There's just lots of reasons. And I just found it interesting, and it helps me understand a little more as to why we have those differences from the generations. And it's okay because nothing stays the same. It always changes, doesn't it? So that was my take on the generational differences in work styles. Perhaps you have a few more suggestions and ideas that you've thought about or come across in this topic and you'd like to share them. Please leave a comment if you do, and I thank people that do who leave comments. Also, if you would please give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down, depending on what you would like, and or ring the bell, please, for me. That would be much appreciated. I'm Boots Burns, and this has been my topic on generational work styles. And I'll see you again next Tuesday.